Across Gaza, one thing is clear. Israel's military operation is relentless. Now, as Gaza City's 1 million people brace for a new ground offensive, those who've already fled in search of safety fear even greater catastrophe may be imminent. Witnesses said the IDF struck the al-Munasira camp in Deir al-Balah 3 times today. Some 70 families already living in makeshift homes, now forced to flee once again.
Well, America's special ally has decided to completely ignore international condemnation and overnight launched its offensive against Gaza City with a barrage of strikes. It's the latest move in the Israeli government's conquest and mission to expand as part of the Greater Israel Project. Now, the operation in Gaza City is being referred to as Gideon's Chariot 2. And aside from Gaza City, the Israeli occupation forces bombed Khan Yunis in southern Gaza and Deir al-Balah in the center of the enclave. Now, clearly, Israel has no appetite for peace and has completely ignored the fact that Hamas has in fact accepted a ceasefire deal that is far more favorable to the Israelis than it is to the Palestinians. But nonetheless, Israel said its military had entered the first stages of a planned assault that includes calling up 60,000 reservists. There are also reports that Israel is looking for an additional 10,000 troops and is essentially soliciting for troops on the international stage. So let me just say, if you're an American and you identify as an American and you leave this country to go fight on behalf of Israel's genocide, I don't know if I really want to consider you a fellow American. But nonetheless, Netanyahu is still pretending as though he wants to save the hostages and defeat Hamas, when in reality he wants to expand Israel's borders. He says, quote, "I have come to approve the IDF's plans to take over Gaza City and defeat Hamas. At the same time, I have instructed to begin immediate negotiations on the release of all our hostages and an end to the war on terms acceptable to Israel. These two things, defeating Hamas and releasing our hostages, go hand in hand." That's also just a complete lie. It's not really about getting the hostages back. And I would be, sadly, it would be shocking if the remaining hostages remain alive, because it's not really about saving them. It's not about freeing them. It's about doing whatever it takes to clear that land of the Palestinian people so Israel can snatch it for themselves. Cenk, back to you.
So we're now going from genocide to Holocaust. So we're not there yet. Holocaust is when you try to wipe out everyone in the race, but they're trying to either move or kill 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. So you're gonna see later in the program, it's one of the worst civilian kill ratios in modern history. They're definitely intending to murder the civilians. It's now a full-blown terrorist state. Their civilian kill ratio is way worse than Hamas's, way worse than Bosnia, which was a historic genocide, worse than Sudan, and I can go on, and we will later in the program. So they are intentionally murdering civilians, children. We've got another quote from is the head of the Israeli military directorate, who said that we should kill 50 Palestinians for 1 Israeli, including their children. So when I see Israelis on TV, etc., defending this genocide, they all look German to me. And they're like, yeah, this is genocide is sehr gut, mach schnell on killing the Palestinians and removing them from Gaza. Okay, so now these guys are saying, yeah, we're gonna move out the whole million.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is textbook ethnic cleansing, guys, textbook. There's no dispute over it at all. So if you're still supporting Israel, you're supporting a terrorist state, and you should own up to it. You should say, yeah, I like terrorism as long as it helps me. I like that we're murdering the Palestinian children because, hey, then we'll get to take Gaza and we'll have more land. You could just be honest, then at least we could have an honest conversation. But the idea that Israel is not doing terrorism or this is not a genocide is completely over.
So the United Nations body for Palestinian refugees, known as UNRWA, said that nearly 1 in 3 children in Gaza were now malnourished. intentionally so. I mean, look, Israel defaming UNRWA as a Hamas terrorist organization was very much intentional. Stopped the flow of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip for literally 3 months. And then follow that with an Israeli-backed organization that's run by American contractors that essentially shoots and kills desperate Palestinians as they go to 3 humanitarian aid hubs. UNRWA was operating hundreds of humanitarian aid hubs in Gaza before they were banned by the Israelis. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza said Thursday that 2 people had died due to malnutrition in the past 24 hours, bringing the total to 271. 271 people who have died from malnutrition, from starvation, since Israel launched its assault on the besieged enclave. And there's now also an Israeli paper, I want to be clear, an Israeli paper publishing about some leaked documents from the IDF that finally sheds light on the combatant to civilian ratio. Basically, the number of civilians who have been killed versus the number of Hamas militants that have been killed. And it turns out Israeli army database suggests at least 83% of Gaza dead were civilians. Classified intelligence for May reveals Israel believed it had killed some 8,900 militants in its attacks on Gaza, indicating a proportion of civilian slaughter with few parallels in modern warfare, because this is a genocide. That's what this is. Okay, so this is the IDF's documentation, the IDF's. Okay, the most moral army that we are funding, that we are arming, disgusting. 83% as of May of the people slaughtered in Gaza, civilians. Let me read some excerpts from this piece. Figures obtained from the classified database, which records the deaths of militants from Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, contradict by a huge margin the public statements of Israeli army and government officials throughout the war, which have generally claimed a 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 ratio of civilian to militant casualties. Now, the Israeli army has even confirmed the existence of this database, and it seems like they get away with everything, so they don't really feel the need to deny it or anything. They're acknowledging it. So this was managed by the Military Intelligence Directorate, which also goes by a Hebrew acronym Amman. So the Israeli army believed it had killed around, again, 8,900 operatives since October 7th through May of this year. The deaths of 7,330 of whom were considered certain and 1,570 recorded as probably dead. The vast majority of them were junior, meaning junior combatants, with the army suspecting it had killed 100 to 300 senior Hamas operatives out of a total of 750 named in the database. Now, taking the militant casualty figures obtained from the internal Israeli army database in May and lining them up against the health ministry's total death toll, it is possible to calculate an approximate civilian casualty ratio for the war up until 3 months ago, when the death toll stood at 53,000. So in other words, again, as we had suspected, the vast majority of those who have been killed in Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces were in fact civilians. And by the way, the Gaza Health Ministry's numbers is an undercount because it doesn't consider the bodies that are still trapped under the rubble. There are hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza that are missing right now. And I think it's pretty safe to presume those individuals are dead. So we don't know what the exact death toll is at the moment, but even the IDF acknowledges in their own internal database that, again, the vast majority of people they have killed are in fact civilians, and I think that's intentional.
Of course it's intentional, and we've told you before, American doctors talking about sniper shots on kids under the age of 5, an unbelievable number of them. They were literally bombing and razing all of the buildings and homes in Gaza. I mean, if this is unintentional, I mean, why would you pay people to destroy every building in Gaza if it's unintentional? Like none of it makes any sense. Look, so let's break this down one by one. First of all, I mentioned some historic genocides before. Let me give you more. The butcher of Damascus, Bashar al-Assad, just annihilated Aleppo early on in the civil war. It was just grotesque. The civilian kill ratio there was 59%. Israel's is 83%, okay? And that's 83% is low because it doesn't count anyone under the rubble. It is a massive undercount according to the Lancet Journal, one of the top medical journals in the world. But even if you take that number, and the number of people that they killed that are theoretically Hamas fighters is also high. There's about 1,700 of them that they say are probably dead. So we're giving them the probably dead, right? Because this is from a leak from IDF itself, right? So you give them all that and they still get to 83% now. But of course, nothing as bad as the barbaric terrorists of Hamas. Because on October 7th, their civilian kill ratio, a little bit of dispute around civilians and military around the edges, so the number can't be pinpointed exactly, but it is between 60 and 67%. Wait a minute, that's way lower than Israel's kill ratio. So now Israel's civilian kill ratio much higher than the terrorist group Hamas, and they have now done 60 October 7ths at a bare minimum. 60. So when that military director guy in Israel said we should kill 50 civilians for one Israeli and murder their children too, it was an undercount. They've now gone to 60, and that's before they annihilate Gaza City, which started today, okay? So look, that's why I'm telling you, genocide is now beginning to be too mild a term. It appears that they're trying to wipe out all the Palestinians in Gaza, and that would be very much historic. There's only really one other time that's happened, and of course, ironically, it happened to the Jews in Germany. In terms of the caloric intake and the starvation that they're doing, obviously also shows intent. But did you know that before October 7th, Israel was already managing the caloric intake of Gaza?
I did know that actually.
And what's funny is that they say like, oh no, we left Gaza. We left it. We control Gaza? No, not at all. No, they have the border closed. They have checkpoints. Anyone that approaches the wall without permission gets murdered, literally. 150 people murdered in a peaceful protest in 2018. And they control Gaza completely. All the medical aid, the food, even before October 7th. You know why? Because it's a despotic and dictatorial occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. You know, when people say, oh, why should we support Israel? They say, oh, it's the only democracy in the Middle East. That's a giant lie. I mean, what kind of a democracy is like, yeah, democracy for us, but we keep 5.5 million prisoners. And they have no rights at all, and we can kill them at any time. And we control how much food they're allowed to eat, and when we want to, we starve them to death. By the way, 266 Gazans have already starved to death, 122 of them are children. So when you're starving people to death, you don't get to say it's unintentional. No, this is act of global terrorism, state terrorism, and a maniacal genocide. And at this point, anyone denying it is basically declaring, I don't think Palestinians are human. I think the Israelis are superior to the Palestinians, and we can murder them all we want. It doesn't matter. We'll just get our dogs in American media and in American politics to call them terrorists and to call us a democracy and a moral army. I'll give you two more examples from the story from great story from this Israeli outlets, Plus 972 magazine and The Guardian. So this is how the Israelis count. So they went and killed 200 areas. This is in their own documentation. 200 people, and they say they were all terrorists. Then an officer is like, only 10 of them were terrorists. The other 190 were civilians. We count them all as terrorists, okay? In another instance, 100 people killed. They say 100 of them were terrorists. An officer says only 2 of them were. The other 98 were civilians. But count them all as terrorists. And still you get to 83%. Okay, so yeah. No, if you're denying that it's intentional, you're purposely lying, and you're aiding and abetting genocide. So that's where we are now. So if you raise your hand and say, I still support Israel doing this, you're a bit of a monster. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.